For those who don't know me, I'm an engineer here in Toronto. My name is Guillermo Subauste, as they said. Thanks for inviting me to talk here. I have a studio in the city, and I had already tried to do some streaming from the studio for sessions that I had. So I had invested in some, modest gear as to how to connect my DSLR to the computer, for example. That's done through a USB capture that takes the HDMI output of the camera and then puts it in the computer. I bought it for maybe something like $150 back like 3 years ago. Turns out that they're all sold out in most places. It was one of the first things that I would recommend to people if they wanted to improve the image of their feed was that. But yeah, maybe look for some used ones. I think Elgato, the Cam Link is the one I use. A lot of the questions I get from people are like, well, can I connect my camera to the HDMI port in my computer? The answer is no. That's an out port, and the computer doesn't recognize it as an input, for those of you who are wondering about that. Yeah, so I have a studio. I work mostly producing, playing drums, playing guitar. I did some live sound as well. I was on the road for about 5 years with the Sadies. I've also toured with Sarah Harmer. So part of the live sound / studio world appeals to me and makes it not boring. So when this whole thing happened, maybe it was the resourcefulness of being from Peru and having had to work with 2 channels out of a 16-channel board that were, the only ones working, and somehow do a salsa orchestra with all that. So I put together what I had, which is just a Mac Mini I just got a video card, actually, because I'm doing a lot of video editing, something similar to the project that was shown before. With Bravo Niagara, we have something like 100 singers that, yes, they all recorded on their iPhones with the microphone from the iPhone. There was not a lot of time to prepare for that, and there are a lot of singers. So thank God for Melodyne and Revoice as well. They helped a lot with this project. But when it comes to the streaming part, I was doing already some streaming shows from my studio, and when this whole thing started, I decided to start hosting shows at my studio for those bands that had their shows canceled. I did a few with Misha Burger-Gossman, who I had worked with both as an engineer and also as a drummer, and they turned out great. Then we did something with Urgent as well, which was another company that wanted to do several shows in the empty venues across Toronto. Unfortunately, that got shut down quick because then the quarantine became a bit more strict, or the social distancing, I guess. But because I had to cancel some of the streamings that I was going to do from my studio, I realized that I could still help the artists that wanted to do streaming, making sure that they had everything set up. Now, to get to work with the things I have, it took a lot of trial and error and forums, searching through forums and YouTube tutorials and all this stuff, and just frustration to find out a solution, and then that creates another problem somewhere else. So what I started doing was offer my services as a online tech, basically a / engineer that can help with all these little things as to how to make your microphone work through the DAW, how to make it work in Zoom, how do I stream both to YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Like a lot of those questions I've already answered by searching and by making it work as well. So the first person I had to cancel one of my stream shows with was Sarah Sleen, who wanted to do a stream from her house, but I have a pregnant partner, so we were a bit more careful with the whole social distancing, and I didn't really feel comfortable going to her place, and I felt bad canceling, but I still wanted to be able to help her. So what I did was I used Chrome. Actually has this really cool remote desktop control. So I know there's TeamViewer and there's other options, but I already have Chrome, and I found it to be pretty quick. Basically, the other person just clicks on remote Chrome in their Chrome browser, and then it says get support, generate code, and then they just paste that code, You put that code in your end, and then you have control of their computer. Now, with this, I'm able to, on the phone, I would call them over FaceTime, for example, so I can see them as well. I could look at the microphone positionings. I could tell them, probably get that a bit closer, or maybe try this thing. Is the cardioid, is it on cardio or omni? Is the pad on or not? Like most of the time, like when I'm working in the studio, I'm careful with my mic positioning, but, you know, having worked live sound, a lot of it is visual as well. If it looks like it sounds good, most likely it's a good starting point as well. That just comes from experience. So being able to see it on the camera was good to make sure that things were pointing to the right way, to the right places. And then being able to access their computer was great, because in order to make this work, I use universal audio interfaces, which are awesome because I'm able to hit the computer through an Eve preamp and a compressor, for example, or apply some EQ in or whatnot. And that works great for all this stuff, but a lot of people don't have these UAD interfaces, and they might have, some Focusrites or Behringers or whatever they are. Some of them are great, some of them not so much, but what they all share is that they don't have any processing, which is great for recording and to be as purist as you want to be. But for a stream, it's you kind of have to treat it like a live show, basically, which it is. So I want to get the signals a bit more processed, right? And it's a bit hard to be able to tell people what to do just over the phone. So with being able to control their computer, I was able to download OBS, for example, which is one of the solutions that I offer. Also, Loopback is another program that has been amazing for Mac. It's basically the replacement of Soundflower, for those of you who are familiar with it. Loopback is not a cheap program. It's about $100, but it allows you to connect any software that is in your computer and create a virtual sound card for it. And it's very straightforward. So what I started doing was, sending the audio from, let's say, Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools or whatever DAW the person is comfortable using, or even just opening an arm in tracks. That's the minimum thing they have to do for their show later on, because I'm able to look at their computer. The only thing I can't do is change the gain, and for that I just ask them, and I'm looking at the meter while it's happening. And then once we have the audio going, we change from FaceTime and we go to Zoom, so I'm able to hear how it's sounding from there. And yes, there's latency for me, but I don't really care about it, because it's not really that bad. Basically, the person is singing and it sounds kind of dark, so then you just grab the high frequency EQ and then you bring it up a little bit. The sections are getting a bit too quiet or too loud, you change the gain and maybe apply some compression or whatnot. The other thing that I have done a couple of times is even control the mix while it's happening live. That doesn't work that well, and the only reason why I was using it is to be able to mute the reverb if the artist was not close to the computer in between songs. But writing faders and doing that kind of stuff is not as easy, so you kind of have to work with a static mix. But that again, if you're able to yourself, apply into whatever DAW the artist is using, then you're 80% there, I would say. So yeah, from that I've been able to work with Cyrus Lean, Dan Mangan as well, and a few of the artists from Side Door. Had the guys from Set the Whale earlier as well. Tapestry Opera from Toronto is also doing something similar to that. It's not a streaming, but again, they call me and we do the same setup where I talk to each of the artists and make sure that the microphone is at the right distance and with the right gain settings, and then I get it all and mix it for them. That's pretty much it.
So Guillermo, when was the last time you changed the foam in that RE20 of yours there?
Actually, right after the last streaming show I did.
Man, did you really? Did you buy new foams? Did you seriously?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I know the guy that sells that for EV, Ethan. Yeah, he's an interesting cat. Yeah, something about people who know EV parts off by heart. Hey, and that's super awesome.
We have Revolution to thank for all that.